At its root, one of the things that we're having a hard time with right now, if you want to be super pessimistic about the lovely world of content, and especially poorly written and poorly managed content, is that we're dealing with a depreciating asset. Content that is not developed correctly or that is not curated or managed effectively can become a depreciating asset, and that becomes even harder to sell up to the executive team. So what you have are these individuals who are basically that's awesome. My confidence monitor just shut off randomly, which is totally cool. So what you have are folks that are basically saying, executive teams are saying, just get me the content strategy. I want to see the content strategy. It becomes an issue now where they need to measure, and the executive teams are starting to become more and more antsy about getting answers to this problem. Now, what's happening is folks, strategists such as myself, practitioners, content professionals in general, they often get answered the question, well, what is the content strategy? I want to see what it looks like. Tell me what it looks like. I get this all the time. And what's happening is you get this lazy response, which is, well, it depends. Now, basically, that is a cop-out, and I want to make sure that, and I want to caution folks from being able to use that kind of as a cop-out. But in defense of the whole it depends mantra, what we do as specialists, especially as strategists, when we're working on creating a strategy for a specific business entity, is creating customized work. This is customized work. This is not, you're not getting a stock out-of-the-box content strategy where you literally just, figure things out and, it just becomes another item that you need to deal with. So this whole it depends really does depend, but we need to work on massaging that message. Now, unfortunately, as we go through projects and as we deal through, kind of the minutia of our day-to-day tasks, because a lot of folks, and especially in upper management, are having a hard time defining what the content strategy is, right? And so it becomes this checkbox item. If you're working within a project, what will happen is, often it'll be one of those things where, right along the lines of design and wireframes, it's the content strategy. And it really becomes this kind of false way in which to imply the value of the work that we do, having it just be a check mark within all of our projects. And it's also the one strategy in an organization, especially if you think about this, the one strategy that has a checkbox next to it. You don't ever see a business that's starting, to create their own entity and say, well, do we have our business strategy? Check. Do we have our sales strategy? Check. Or do they have multiple strategies? Check, check, check. So, one of the things is as this discipline has grown and evolved, it's also become a victim of its success in a little bit of a way. So, as we think about the role of content, this is not a project problem. This is not something that just magically is a part of whatever project that you're interested in. It's really, at the heart, an organizational asset or a complete liability to the organization, depending on what you're working on. So in order to get our arms around this problem, today I want to talk about really 4 key parts of being able to grow and sustain a realistic content strategy that can grow and scale for either the business that you guys work on today or the different business entities or organizations that you guys are working with. So we're going to talk about defining the content strategy that you need to implement within your own organization. We're going to talk about documenting that. What does it look like? What does it look like to document, quote unquote, the content strategy? Then we're going to talk about distributing that content strategy. What does it look like when we need to be able to socialize this to certain areas of the business? And there are a high number of different areas of the business that we're going to need to be able to deal with. And then lastly, we'll talk about refining. What is that next step? How do we get to a point where we're able to grow and mature the content initiatives that we want for our organizations in a way that matches with their business expectations? So those are the 4 main parts. As we get through this, let's talk about the definition aspect of it. And one of the things I think as practitioners is it's really easy to stand up here on stage and be like, this is what you need to do about defining the content strategy, and these are all the different things that you have to consider. We're so ingrained in the projects that we're working on day to day that it's really hard to just sit down and be like, I'm going to sit down and define what I'm actually working on. It's really not a core reality of the work world that we're in right now, right? So what we do is we tend to think about content strategy within the context of the projects that we're working on. So it becomes, what's the content strategy look like for your intranet, for your product, or for your app, your microsite, your tool, your blog, right? And so what ends up happening is that we become, whether we like it or not, the Oprah Winfrey of content strategies. You get a content strategy. You get a content strategy. Every different organization, every different project within your organization gets a content strategy. And that's creating this duplicitous monster of a world that we now need to wrangle. And we're too busy as strategists wrangling content that goes in front of the customers, right? How are we going to now deal with multiple content strategies within an organization? So I'll say it on slide 5, and I'll say it on slide 50. You get one. Your organization gets one content strategy. That's it. It's not sustainable to think that organizations today can manage multiple and disparate content strategies without being able to figure out how to grow and refine those businesses. So if there's anything that you take away from today, Joe always talks about the one or the 3 different points, right? What is the one thing? I'll make it super easy for the track. It's early in the morning. We're just kicking things off. Just one. You just get one. So let's start with that.